Welcome to Aviation This Week on Channels Television. I'm Bukola Joe Oketumbi. Rising costs of operations in the COVID-19 era, non-compliance to the executive order on duty-free aircraft spares, and the difficulty in accessing foreign exchange as at when due are some of the challenges currently facing airlines in Nigeria. For many, these challenges may cause operators to begin to cut corners. But the Airline Operators of Nigeria has said it would rather ask its members to stop operations rather than endanger passengers. Our focus on this edition is how Nigeria's domestic operators will get out of the woods and remain afloat. Plus, the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority warns pilots and air traffic controllers over adverse weather. Let's take off from here.
Triax, Okada, ADC Airlines, Chachangi, Oriental Airlines, Albalka, Cabo, Sosoliso, Bellevue, and AfriJet. That's a list of just 10 of the over 20 airlines that have gone under in Nigeria. No thanks to factors that include poor business plan, high cost of maintenance, choice of operational equipment, high interest on loans, and poor corporate governance. Before the COVID season, statistics show domestic airlines in Nigeria on the average pay about 35% to 40% of a ticket cost as taxes and charges that come under the guise of statutory levies in addition to other charges. Post-pandemic costs have risen and ticket prices are rising.
65,000 to Abuja, just one way. It's quite expensive. I almost didn't buy, but because what I was going was important, I just had to pay.
I bought it 81,700. The upper week I traveled through this airline, I paid 66,000. Yes, to and fro, but it's now 81,700.
I paid 28,500. Yeah.
Okay, compared to the last previous one, can you compare the increment?
Yeah, there's been, the last ticket I bought to this one, there was like a marginal increase.
In the mix of rising costs of operations, lesser fees and the scarcity of foreign exchange, especially in this post-COVID-19 times, local airlines are indeed battling for existence.
Aviation is not cheap. You will see clearly that even during this lockdown across the globe, you see airlines getting billions of dollars, billions of pounds. This is because the country understands the fact that if they don't do that, then the economy is going to go down. I know that the government did something by giving about 5 billion naira to the industry, but to be honest with you, that money is not even enough for aero contractors or for ARIC, not to even talk about the entire industry.
These issues may have prompted the chairman of the Senate Committee on Aviation, Smart Adeyemi, to raise an alarm that planes could fall from the skies. An airline operator believes this call is coming at the right time.
From his own perspective as a distinguished senator, a politician, and a businessman, I think he's right, because he has seen the recipe where you underfund a particular industry, and the critical part of that industry, which is foreign exchange, is still very scarce to that industry. So the recipe he's seen is disaster. We as professionals will not allow this to happen. We will not. We will rather have a business go under rather than have the airplanes falling off the sky. So we will not cut corners. No airline will do that, because what we are selling is speed and safety, or safety and speed. And if we're going to lose safety, then the business will collapse.
While members of the airline operators are confident their members will not cut corners, mergers may just emerge.
Most of the airlines were cautious in putting more airplanes on the market, meaning more seats, because we don't know how the passengers, how they will react to coming back from COVID-19. So as we saw that the passengers have more confidence, so people were bringing the airplanes back. Luckily for us, the passenger traffic has increased, but the capacity is reducing, is shrinking, which is really bad. But on a more positive note, I think you will see airlines most likely merging together, or some of them are coming up, and the following year you will see a very strong aviation industry.
As oil prices tank while global demand has dropped in the COVID-19 era, Nigeria's economy is being caught in the crosshairs, and it's important to push growth in the aviation sector as an enabler of economic growth.
Running an airline in Nigeria is now more difficult than before, and the vice chairman of the Airline Operators of Nigeria, who also is chairman at Airpeace, is our guest. He believes this sector needs an enabling environment now than ever before.
We all know that COVID-19 has devastated the world of aviation. Nigeria is not immune from what is happening all over the world. Airlines are the worst hit. The environment is not that friendly for aviation to thrive. So, now coupled with COVID-19, the lots of the airlines have been so affected and diminished. Safety is safety. If you're unsafe, there shouldn't be any reason for being unsafe, whether you're giving money or not giving money. Yes, it is true that we need a lot of money to function. It is true that the 4 billion being given to us is meager. For example, one of my engines alone on the 777 is more than 4 billion. But we are getting 4 billion for all the airlines in Nigeria. It is very meager. No doubt about that. We are grateful to government for even considering us for at least something as little as that. There shouldn't be any reason at all to do anything unsafe. The president of this country, President Muhammad Buhari, in his wisdom, granted us complete zero duty waiver, the custom duty waiver, and zero VAT on the importation of commercial, not private, commercial aircraft and commercial spare parts, aircraft spares. Gave zero VAT on ticket fares. We've been enjoying this zero duty on importation of aircraft and zero VAT on importation of aircraft and aircraft spares for the past 6 years. All of a sudden, custom turned around and introduced a regime unknown to us. So whatever we need is imported. For aviation to succeed in this country, the president of this country did the right thing. Now, the presidential order or executive order taken at the Federal Executive Council is being flouted. And airlines are being made to pay through their noses for clearing of these aircrafts and clearing of aircraft spares. And what we are saying is that this shouldn't continue. If it continues and we do not have money to clear our spare parts, like now most airlines will have our spares out there with customs. We cannot, if we fly without replacing these parts, that's a disaster. And we do not want, as airlines, cause any disaster. We are highly regulated. NCA is alive to its duties, I must tell you that. The kind of oversights NCA does on Nigerian Airlines, not even the first world, they don't do it on their airlines. You're flying through the airspace, you're owing NAMA, later they will reconcile and tell you this is what you're going to pay. As you're taking off, the airport authorities are providing some services. It's not cash and carry. These are things that are reconciled later. So, with NCA. So when some people say airlines are owing, yes, they're owing. Some are even bad debts. Maybe some people didn't pay when they are supposed to pay and the thing continued to accumulate. The agencies, they need money to function. No doubt about that. But remember, the agencies are supposed to be cost recovery, not to make gains. Therefore, I call on government to stop asking NCA, FAN, and other government agencies to remit money to them, to remit 25% of their earnings to them. Because when you are telling these agencies to remit money to government ports, you're indirectly telling them to go out there and make profit. That is not how it's supposed to be. The account principles detest that. the owners of these airlines have succeeded in other businesses, why is it that everybody that comes into aviation in Nigeria fails? Until we answer that question, then we've not begun to make any meaning.
Now to Canada, where a small recycling company is taking advantage of an opportunity presented by aircraft retirement. Retired aircraft line this tarmac, waiting to be dismantled. Various workers move air ramp across the tarmac. As COVID-19 grounds a large number of airline fleet, accelerated plane retirements is somewhat creating a room for profits for companies that thrive on dismantling and trade of aircraft parts.
This is an Airbus 310 that we started the harvesting of parts and the decontamination of this specific aircraft.
Canada's Aerocycle is bidding to buy grounded planes for the first time to dismantle and resell for parts, instead of just recycling.
Behind there are bags, and what we're doing that's kind of special, that's why we just started doing it. The insulation that you see here in the walls, we've given this to a company in Quebec that manufactures electric buses, and they want to reuse the insulation bags for their buses. So we're trying that out right now.
While companies involved in the trade see opportunities in parked planes, a sudden increase in the supply of used parts risks depressing prices in the estimated $3 billion a year industry. With aviation remaining in a slump because of the pandemic, the fate of the world's pool of grounded planes is being closely watched by players in the market for used serviceable materials.
They're going to have to make certain financial decisions and cut their losses. Try and maximize the value of getting a certain value for the aircraft now versus next year. You know, no one knows what the actual market, how the market predictions are going to be, right? So, you know, if certain aircrafts are available now and they're priced right, that's where we're going to make the move to possibly purchase them.
The number of planes dismantled for parts or scrap could double to 1,000 annually through 2023. That's up from roughly 400 to 500 planes a year since 2016.
I think companies like ourselves are going to take certain precautions on harvesting parts off different types of airplanes to make sure that, you know, we're investing our money on removing parts that are, you know, in high demand. There's no rush for us to harvest parts off an aircraft. It could take a bit longer to make sure that our return on investment is a low risk. And, you know, if we need a part within 48 hours, we can get a part removed and, you know, AOG or shipped to whoever's requesting that part, right? So for us, it's more about being cautious on how we're harvesting parts off which aircraft. Versus before, it was a bit more open, so we would harvest more parts and keep them in inventory. Now, we're just going to, you know, again, make sure we measure our risks on removing what parts off what aircraft.
Airplane recycling pertains to the process of harvesting parts and materials from end-of-life aircraft. As the airline industry looks to become more eco-friendly as well as to cut costs, one area of increasing interest is that of aircraft recycling. With 12,000 aircraft scheduled to be decommissioned over the next 2 decades, recycling will play a larger role.
Gatwick Airport in the United Kingdom is bracing up for business, while Dutch Airlines KLM gears up for vaccine transport across the world. That's on our special report.
Planes on the tarmac at Gatwick Airport. Passengers checking in ahead of a flight. For authorities at Britain's Gatwick Airport, the introduction of shorter quarantine time from mid-December is boosting travel, and that's also because of the combination of testing and a COVID-19 vaccine possibility. Gatwick, which is Britain's second busiest airport, is also opening a new COVID-19 testing facility, offering passengers discounted tests. From mid-December, travellers arriving in England will have to quarantine for 5 days instead of 14 if they have a negative test.
We changed the rules because at the moment it requires 14 days of self-isolation or quarantine. This will reduce it to 5 days, and having consulted very extensively with medical experts, we believe that 5 days plus a very reliable test is sufficient time now to be able to release people, and the test capacity is there to do this now.
Gatwick's testing site is in a long-stay car park and will initially be able to test up to 500 people per day, but this could be ramped up to 2,000 a day and then 4,000 a day given sufficient demand.
What we do hope is by providing these test facilities, we can actually start to stimulate demand with a reduced quarantine. But really what we're calling on the government to do is introduce pre-airport, pre-departure testing using these sorts of facilities in the new year so that passengers can travel in either direction quarantine-free. Quarantine is really suppressing the demand.
The pandemic has battered the global aviation industry, leaving Gatwick particularly exposed as airlines such as British Airways and Virgin Atlantic have prioritized flights from Heathrow, Britain's #1 airport, to the west of London.
Well, certainly as the airport operator, we can ramp up literally from one day to the next. So we're ready to respond to any passenger demand that is there. And when we listen to the airlines who will determine how many flights fly, I think most of the airlines are talking about flying about 60 or 70% of the summer schedules that they would have flown in 2019. So I expect once the vaccinations roll out and the testing's rolled out, we should expect to see quite strong performance in the market next summer. It's really about getting the confidence in the consumer to book travel and to fly next year.
During England's latest lockdown in November, Gatwick's EasyJet's biggest bays had about 4 flights a day, a startling drop from 600 flights a day this time last year. Some of Gatwick's airlines, such as Norwegian, are fighting for survival. Now to Chile, as the country reopens its main airport to foreign tourists under strict measures after 8 months of closure owing to the coronavirus pandemic. Travelers must present evidence of a recent negative COVID-19 test, health insurance, and they will also have to report their whereabouts and health status for a 2-week watch period. The South American country plans to gradually reopen other airports to reactivate its tourism sector. Chile closed its borders in March to halt new coronavirus cases. Still on airports and partnerships with airlines, in a cavernous cold storage warehouse at Amsterdam's Schiphol Airport, KLM workers are gearing up for a surge next year in COVID-19 vaccine cargoes that will need to be flown around the world at ultra-low temperatures. A major hub for pharmaceutical products, Schiphol has already handled some of the vaccines being used in trials, and KLM's boss is confident its cold chain operations will cope with the influx of cargoes as mass inoculations start in earnest.
So what we expect, the volumes for the vaccines come on top of the regular volumes. However, we do expect that they come gradually. So the first ones will probably come in December, January, and from there on new vaccines will be approved. The additional capacity that is needed for that is something that we're planning for. So we do expect to be able to handle the additional volumes needed for vaccine transportation.
While no COVID-19 vaccine has yet been approved by US or European regulators, the shot developed by Pfizer and biotech is the most advanced in the process and could be ready for rapid production and distribution next month. but it needs to be stored and shipped at minus 70 degrees Celsius, while Moderna's candidate has to be kept at minus 20 degrees Celsius, at least until the drugs have reached their destination, where they can survive in normal fridges for short periods.
The vaccines need to be transported at different ranges. So I think there's a lot of talk about the deep frozen ones, but the majority of the vaccines would actually be transported between 2 and 8 degrees positive. So it depends on the vaccine and how it will be transported.
Wearing thick blue gloves, workers topped up dry ice and other active containers, which also have a battery-powered electrical refrigeration system and an array of sensors to ensure products stay within their target range as low as minus 20 degrees Celsius. Now to Australia, where Qantas will insist in future that international travelers have a COVID-19 vaccination before they fly, describing the move as a necessity.
We are looking at changing our terms and conditions to say for international travellers that we will ask people to have a vaccination before they can get on the aircraft. What do you need that domestically? We'll have to see what happens with COVID-19 in the market, but certainly for international visitors coming out and people leaving the country, we think that's a necessity.
Australia closed its international borders in March during the first wave of the pandemic and currently requires returning travellers from overseas to quarantine for 2 weeks.
Newsflash takes off with the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority asking pilots, airline operators and others to be cautious as severe dust, air and fog phenomenon is now prevalent across Nigerian airports. The adverse weather condition is expected to subsist from November over the north central and December over the southern part of the country. In addition, early morning fog may also be experienced in the months ahead, especially along the coastal areas in the south. The regulatory agency says to ensure safe and efficient flight operations during this period, pilots, airline operators, and air traffic controllers are directed to observe series of responsibilities, which include flight crew and operators, as well as air traffic controllers, must be conversant with each aerodrome weather minima and ensure strict adherence to the requirements. Air traffic controllers may temporarily close airspace when hazardous weather conditions such as heavy fog or severe dust haze reduces the visibility to below airport operating minima. Arik Air has leased a Boeing aircraft to boost its fleet. According to the airline, the leased aircraft will be deployed into service from December the 2nd. This will enable the carrier return to some routes which are suspended at the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. The airline also said the aircraft will boost its fleet in readiness for the Yuletide season. As part of preparations for the opening of the newly completed international terminal at the Malam Aminu Kano International Airport in Kano, the airport authority has been inspecting facilities at that terminal. FAN also adds that in 10 days, the nation's 23 airports would have been inspected. The agency said the tour is aimed at assessing the infrastructural needs of the airports while also evaluating their preparations for the annual surge in passenger traffic during the Yuletide season. And that's our program this week. Thank you so much for staying with us. I'm Bukola Joe Oketumbi.